And we're gonna go ahead and get started. And it looks like Eric, we have somebody on.
It's just me. There's nobody else but that's on.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we're taking a look here at the agenda. We have welcome and introduction. And is that for me to?
Yeah, you're actually still in your own thunder. We were gonna introduce you, Melinda, Vice Chair. We appreciate you guys stepping up and really helping out and being a part of leading this great team of Region 8 and Stakeholder Committee. We have a presentation we're gonna go up with tonight. So one thing I do want to mention is all the meetings that we can connect to Wi-Fi anyway, we're gonna record and put online. So keep that in mind, communicating, talking, stuff of that nature. We have the owl, that's going to be what you can kind of see where the video is, so I can see you. And the cool thing with these owls, as you talk, it kind of fit the camera to you. So if someone were talking out, the dual screen, and it's really see like this like that. So it's pretty cool. So here's our overall tonight is the game plan, the agenda you guys have in front of you. We're gonna really talk about the history of Region 8 and then get into the vision and talk about what you all as a group want and you as the future of Region. With that, I will pass it over to Jeff, Anna, or Melinda. You guys want to say a few words? You're right. You're going around.
That'd be great. Yeah, that's really good. I'll start. That's okay. Okay, so my name is Anna and I am here in Lothian, so right down the road. Thank you for this meeting location.
Yep.
And, I'm at Honey Harvest Farm. Right.
I love it. Best farm in Arundel County.
Whoa.
I know, buddy.
I could go fish farm.
Oh, hi, I'm Mike Suso. I live right near Anna here on Rennick Road. Correctly.
Oh, yeah.
Not a little farm. I'm proud to be here. I'm committed. I bring pizza. I'll bring it every meeting. Doesn't matter to me. Because I get stuff done.
We can rotate it around, see what everybody
Okay.
else thinks, but Jennifer, would you like to?
Hi, I'm Jennifer Holmes. I am in Davidson. Oh,
My former home.
yeah, I'm in Davidsonville, New Zealand.
Hello, everyone. I am Perry Vandervoort. I am with Resident as well.
Well,
I am here.
oh, not far.
Hi, I'm Frank DuBois. I live over in Lothian Estates off of Route 408, and I'm not listening to music. These are actually hearing aids. So if you look like, is he even listening? Yeah. The new AirPod.
My name is Peggy Ball. I'm a resident of Tracy's Landing. I'm here rather representing Our Lady of Sorrows Church and the Owensville, what used to be Owensville, part of the community.
I'm Miriam Collins. I'm in Patuxent Manor off of 214 and Patuxent River Road.
I'm Melinda Kepke. I'm in Harwood, just off Harwood Road. So, not that bad.
For those who don't know, I'm Eric Ketterling. I'll be sending you guys lots of emails, especially on your homework. I'll bug you a lot. I'm a senior planner for Arundel County.
I'm Jessica Levy, also a planner on the Region 8 team.
Emily Wilson from Harwood. My family has Obligation Farm. My husband and I have Etowah Farm, which is right next door. And then my husband has Nightingale Farm, just up the road.
That's my second best movie.
Grew up in Harwood, lived here.
And y'all sent hay down North Carolina.
Yes, Dina was coordinating that through
I
Obligation.
saw that. I was very happy to see that.
And lots of fencing materials and
Yeah.
lots of other things.
That was a good time.
John Tobin. I live probably the farthest from this location, all the way up in Crofton.
I'm Abby Benton. I live in Davidsonville as well. I live in Equal Passages.
I'm Steve Owens. I live in Friendship and I appreciate this meeting location as well.
I'm George Dagnon. I live in Harwood up at Fulton House Road and been in the area for 19 years.
Thank you, Jerry.
I'm very London. And city carrier, my planning administrator and office planning.
County planning building, work on countywide issues, lot of land conservation, civil rights, things, well supporting.
So I think we're fixing the Wi-Fi situation, so we'll definitely improve that. Let's just say a couple of words and reiterate. I'm very excited to see you be all good, but again, just be respectful and be mindful and please, be conscious of the time. So if we're having a conversation, let's try to keep the conversation moving forward rather than saying the same thing 50 times, right? Which is really good. So, and with that, I think if Jessica, you're ready, I'll pass it to you.
All right, so tonight we're here to talk about history and vision. So we're reflecting on our past and where we've come from, so we can chart a course for our future. And you can see up here, we have various topics that we're going to cover over the course of our meetings. So we also recognize that some things, you know, fit into different categories, but like Eric said, we have a lot to cover and a limited number of meetings. So if we've already covered it once, even if you're like, oh, but this applies here, feel free to bring it up, but let's not dwell on it too long because we've got a lot of stuff to cover. So I mentioned we've got a lot of stuff to cover and not so much time. So here's our timeline. So right now we are in plan development. We did a lot of research and outreach over the summer and in the spring, trying to get ready to meet with you guys. And now we're going to take a lot of what we learned and we're going to kind of tell you what we learned and reflect on it. So you'll see that in things like the vision statement questionnaire that you guys, a lot of those things were back that we learned from the community, and so we wanted to bring it back up to everybody and say, this is what we've heard, how much does it resonate with you? Through these meetings, as we cover the various topics, and we go over some of the community feedback that we got, we're going to draft some strategies and policies to help in the Region 8 process. They're going to build on and expand from the goals set forth in Plan 2040, which is the county's general development plan that was adopted in 2021. Also in this process, we're going to do comprehensive zoning. So that process involves staff making recommendations for zoning changes, as well as an opportunity for the public to apply for zoning changes. That's all going to be you guys meeting from now until this summer. So we got a lot to do, like I said, not so many meetings because we meet roughly once a month. Once we get a pretty solid plan and zoning map foundation, we put that on the review, and we also reflect on the comments that we get and the changes before we go out for a planning advisory board review. And it's a similar process before the county council. I've talked a lot about public comment. So we're going to have surveys that we do throughout this process. We're going to have community engagement opportunities where staff is out in the public, and y'all are more than welcome to attend if you'd like. We'll let you know when those dates are. Just love to see your smiling faces through. At these meetings, if there's time permitting, we'll also have public comment. And then, like I said, we put out our draft plan, public review, we've got our maps, public review, and at the planning advisory board and at the county council, there is a public hearing process where folks can write in or come in person to submit testimony. So that being said, we love you guys, we rely heavily on you guys to do your homework and meet with us so that we can know that we're on the right path. We also highly engage the public and we also know that, plan is not a standard. It works with other, plans and, studies and capital improvement projects to make sure that we have a complete picture. So it's just one part of the machine. That being said, sometimes there'll be things that we touch upon and you'll be like, oh, that's a great idea. I want to see a study done for that. I want it to do this and that and this, that. And I love the enthusiasm. I love that you're there, but we can't do everything in these meetings. So sometimes we just have to say, we want to see a study for it, and we trust that they're gonna carry forward the vision and determine what needs to be studied in that, because that would fall under a different. So. What are they? We talked a lot about community engagement, so they're an evaluation of community assets and needs. They're a shared vision for the future. Super important for this meeting, because we're going to talk about vision statement. Figure out community strategy, update the plan land use and zoning map, and have more public engagement. And with that, unless there's anything that I didn't touch upon, I think it's time for a history overview.
Yeah.
So tonight I'm going to provide you with an overview of the history. I think it's important to understand how why the way that it's up today. I'm sure you're all aware that there's a lot of history and a lot of historic resources in Region 8 and so tonight, the presentation is just going to be a snapshot. So if I don't mention something or don't highlight a specific resource, we So the region supported a Native American population for thousands of years, prior to the arrival of European settlers. The miles of shoreline and coastal creeks made the land in Region 8 attractive to early inhabitants. Native Americans relied upon the shoreline as it allowed them access for fish from the Patuxent River and to harvest oysters from the Chesapeake Bay. One of the earliest sites in the county and then highly significant in the state is the Big Point site located in Lothian, New Jersey. And archaeological excavations have taken place there. Radiocarbon dates and artifacts were found indicate nearly consistent occupation at Big Point for at least 10,000 years. By the time Europeans arrived in Antelope County in 1649, the Algonquin speaking people who had visited the region to hunt or fish, they had already begun to move away from the area. Next. The first European settlers in the county established a hamlet known as Providence at the mouth of the Severn River in 1649, but they soon migrated and settled in other parts of the county. As the way for Cecil Calvert, or the second Lord Baltimore, to develop the colony, he instituted programs to encourage plantation settlement and town development. And one program was designating proprietary manors in each county in an attempt to increase population. And one of the earliest in the county was Arundel Manor, established in 1669. And it encompassed over 10,000 acres. It stretched from the Patuxent River on the west, just north of Bayard Road, to the vicinity of Owensville on the east and south to the Brookswoods Road area. By the late 17th century and into the early 18th century, a road system was developed in the South County area, connecting plantations and farms to landings and shipping wharves on the Patuxent and Chesapeake Bay. One of the earliest was the Rich Path, or road, which generally followed the routes on This is part of a major north-south, roadway connecting, southern Maryland with Annapolis and beyond. And many of the early, local roads radiated off of it going east or west. And these are some of the oldest roads, in the county, and it can be seen on the 1794 map. And today, many of these roads are relatively unchanged, and they contribute significantly to the rural character of the region. On the turn of the 19th century, post offices were established at many locations throughout the region, and often they were situated at important crossroads. They gave rise to small villages. Villages such as Davidsonville, Owensville, Friendship, Big Point, and later Bristol, supported stores, blacksmith shops, and in some cases, churches and schools. In historic maps of the 19th century, such as these, which are excerpts from the 1860 Martinet map, show the villages clustered around important intersections for river. The African American community of Mill Swamp, which I'll mention again later, was also established in the 19th century around the intersection of Lenny Creek and Mill Swamp roads. And both the Davidsonville and Owensville historic districts are listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Unlike other regions in the county, one can still associate with Region 8's historical roots through the preserved rural and agricultural landscape. Beginning with colonial settlement, agriculture, and specifically tobacco farms drove the economy in the region. And Pig Point was one of the earliest port towns to establish or to be established in the county, and it became an important tobacco inspection site in 1740. And tobacco remained the cash crop in the region until the Civil War. The war had a significant impact, though, on agricultural practices, particularly in southern and Arundel County. Tobacco production declined across the state after the war, with Maryland dropping from the fourth largest tobacco producer in 1860 to the seventh largest in 1880. With the depletion of the soil and loss of enslaved labor, there was a general trend for farmers to diversify their crops and downsize to smaller farms. While truck farming, which is the cultivation of fruit and vegetables, became a popular type of agriculture, specifically in the northern part of the county, through the 19th century and up to the 1940s. Tobacco farming remained a livelihood in South County throughout the 20th century. And Triangle Tobacco Warehouse, for example, in Wason's Corner, became part of that 20th century continuing with Upper Mall Road and the Pacific becoming a regional tobacco center in Maryland. Historically, European steamship company, and a line of steamships ran up and down the Hudson River carrying and there were two landings that existed in Arundel County, one at Bristol and one at Lions Creek. By the 1850s, the Bristol landing unlike the impact that railroads have, the central and northern part of the county in the 19th and 20th century, it had very little impact on this region and the rest of the country. There was an attempt, however, to construct a north-south railroad through the county from Baltimore to Drum Point, but failed for financial reasons. And the only railroad to run through this region was the Chesapeake Beach Railway. It operated from 1897 to 1935 and ran from Washington, D.C. down to Chesapeake Beach in Calvert County. It crossed the Hudson River at Bristol, and here you can see a photo of the river crossing with passengers on it. There was a station at Arundel, which is also here, and I believe another one at Lions Creek. The station at Arundel also served as a general store, and there was a warehouse and a three-car siding building located there as well. Unfortunately, the railroad, short-lived, it was in 1935 due to the Great Depression. Now, as I said, there are many historic resources in Region 8. And historic resources as defined in the county code include historic buildings and districts, archaeological sites, and cemeteries. And these resources represent multiple historic themes and periods of significance for the over 300-year history of Arundel County. And this region can boast as having some of the oldest prehistoric archaeological sites and historic buildings and sites associated with early colonial history in the county. And pictured here are just a few examples. Both Indian Range, located in Davidsonville, and the James Owings Farm, located in Bristol, were built in the mid-19th century. And there's significant further architectural history, but also further association with the agricultural heritage of the county. The region also has two of the oldest places of worship, including St. James Church. The picture here all follows, which was established in 1682. This church building is the second one on site, and it reflects its 1710 appearance. And the cemetery there contains some of the earliest families in the county, including Harwood, Burgess, Stockett, and Selman. The region is also home to one of the oldest continuously active social clubs of its type in America, and perhaps the oldest one-room schoolhouse in America. The South River Club on the bottom there was built in 1724. There you go. 1742. Established by the early English settlers. And it included, popular landowners, merchants, and clergymen, and the local doctor. The free school was located in Davidsonville, and that was built in 1724 as a result of the act of the General Assembly of Maryland in 1723 that provided a school for each of the 12 counties in the colony. And the free school remained in operation until 1912, when there was a movement to consolidate and enforce the closure of many schools in the county. And this schoolhouse was the only one that survives in Maryland as a direct response to the Free School Act of 1723. But public institutions like the free school were not available to African Americans, so they established their own communities, which often evolved around a church, a school, or their place of work. I mentioned the Mill Swamp community earlier, which also historically is known as Waterloo. And it was established in the 1830s by freedmen who we believe worked at the O'Hara Grist Mill, which was located near the intersection of Muddy Creek and Mill Swamp roads. And by 1858, several free blacks purchased 8-acre parcels adjacent to the mill site. And the village continued to grow into the 20th century. In 1865, the Freedmen's Bureau established one of the first schools for African American children in the county in the Mill Swamp community, and it operated there until 1870. In 1930, the two-room Ralph J. Bunch School, then known as the Mill Swamp School above, was built, and today it serves as a community center and has been added on to the core of that building still there. Another African American enclave in this region is the Lothian or the Mount Zion community, which clusters around Ark Road, located just north of the traffic circle. The community took root after the Civil War and thrived into the 20th century. And many of the residents' ancestors are historically connected to nearby plantations on which they were enslaved. Significant community landmarks there include the Mount Zion United Methodist Church. and cemetery, south. The Drury community, became home to a significant, African-American population by the first part of the 18th century, and continued to grow even after emancipation. Most were enslaved, but, as a result of a self-purchase and manumission, a free Black community grew. Though the postal village of Drury no longer exists, this enclave still exists in Lothian, and there are important resources significant to the community there, especially those significant for the civil rights era, such as the Drury baseball park in the bottom and the Riverbend Club. And these resources are located on Mount Zion or Road. Both of them were documented as part of a project that our office was involved in, to study the civil rights era and resources. And they are featured on a story map that was compiled on our website. In addition to the historic built environment and archaeological sites and cemeteries, the region contains 44 designated scenic and historic roads. And many of these roads are designated scenic and historic rural roads. And so development along them are subjected to additional restrictions under Article 18. And it restricts certain conditional and special exception uses along them. And these roads, and some of which I pointed out earlier, is the earliest roads in the county, have exceptional scenic and historic integrity, and they should be preserved. And while the region has many historic resources that it will provide, there are two resource types that have been lost and that are quickly disappearing. And they are historic Black housing structures, including those of the enslaved and tenant housing that's typically found in one of the county. The other are those structures associated with the county's agricultural heritage, specifically tobacco barns, corn cribs, smokehouses, and dairies, for example. And these secondary structures, they're so significant though to the landscape and the rural farmsteads. Black housing sites has historically not been commonly researched or properly documented, and are an underrepresented cultural resource in the county. Many structures have been lost over the years to natural causes, or some have been demolished to make way for new development. So in order to address this, our office partnered with a nonprofit group called the West Towns Project as part of the non-capital grant with the state to record and study and identify these sites. And one of the resources that we documented was the Arundel Lake House that is located in Harwood. It's pictured above. The house is currently in ruins, but it was formerly inhabited by those enslaved by the historic owners of Arundel. Then later, it was lived in by tenant farmers on the same property. The black and white photo there shows the tenant in the 1940s. In the other photo, you can see that only the chimney and the small kitchen addition. Resources associated with rural farmsteads are also threatened and are disappearing as well, but their significance cannot be overstated. Probably more so than any other resource type, was associated with agriculture are highly endangered through uses become obsolete, and industry changes and development pressures persist. And age, unfortunately, and neglect has taken their toll on many of them. So we applied for an on-capital grant with the state, and we were awarded one to study the county's agricultural heritage and to document resources associated with that heritage. Because it's important that this history lives on, and it's very unique to region. It doesn't exist really anywhere else farm, if you know someone who does and would like to share the history of it, or just have us come and document the buildings on the property, please let me know, because I would love to include that in our study. And I brought flyers as well. Tells you about the and way it.
Very good. Question.
Very snapshot. There's so much here, but yeah.
Thank you, great presentation. I had understood that, I thought the British fleet came up the Patuxent River to Wason's Corner when, during the War of 1812.
They did, flotilla. There was a small, a brief skirmish, at Tracy's, I think Tracy's landing, but yeah, they did.
Okay, but we don't have any, commemoration of that in the county that I know of.
There is, I'm trying to, there is, we didn't interpret a sign, yeah.
My name is Jane Cox, I'm here to explain that, and I also love history and academy. So yeah, there's Barney's Flotilla, that went right to the filter, and there was a pretty spectacular story to go along with that, where we got on in Washington. We talked about putting a sign up with collaboration, so they, well, essentially, and it was also during the War of 1812, where, again, a very funny story where one of the guys tried to defend against the marauders, and he tried to fire a cannon, he hit his foot, he broke his foot. So yeah, there's great one.
Yeah, but we don't even have one of those black and silver markers out there, do we?
That's state program, and it only is available on state program.
For us?
We're the ones who put it on that.
Oh, really? Okay.
I have a question, when you mentioned the road. Is that county code, is that state transportation? Okay.
So that's the part of the code that is zoning. So in there, there's that come on those things or roads that are within this rural.
Everything pop offline, and that's, you've been in Indian rain?
Yes.
Bridget is a good friend.
She,
Yeah. It would be helpful to have to talk to her about it. And then she is refurbishing the kitchen, the old kitchen.
yeah.
She and other people are also involved in the church, the starting cemetery. And that's a big process. That, they're also around it. And there, lastly, there's a gentleman in Davis and those history professor, high school, Mr. Hopkins. And he has a talk to hear about it, about what happened in this area after the Civil War. There isn't history about it because families were on both sides and it was the last tension, and they just kind of wanted to hide it away. So he was very interested in the relationship. He was
Thank you.
As a collaboration with the Lost Town Project, has there been any work done based on findings to try and further preserve whatever might be left at this point?
Yeah, a lot of these resources are privately, and so, we do try to work with the property owner. But to be honest, it's so few how many are still standing, and the report is done, I don't know the number off the top of my head, but they've done this.
I will tell you this, that, it's a couple members of my family our whole family is in preservation, and they have been notified of places like this. And with private funds, they will move because people that have on their property often don't want them or they're about to knock them down.
And it's an historic village in Deal, Maryland. It came from pretty much all over this county of a variety of different vernacular architectural buildings. And they're still interested. They're continuing to preserve. So, happy to put a contact out there for me, and I don't know if they would be interested or if the people that have these would be interested, but that's, I'm sure you're aware of that resource.
Thing like with any agricultural, probably you don't have a use for it. We just say, you
I'm
know.
talking about the other buildings, but the barns would be more challenging to move a large barn, but the
Yes.
smaller. They haven't reached some of those types of buildings. So
So there are some efforts.
there are efforts,
There
yeah, Harrington Harbor, North, Indiana. Oh, it does. Harrington.
So I thank you, Jeremy. One thing, if you guys have additional questions, reach out to staff or Darian directly, we'll have an issue. One thing I probably should have mentioned before the presentation, these presentations from the subject matter experts that come in are gonna be really good informational pieces for you all to help build potential recommendations and strategies for the project. So if I talk about historic preservation, the other areas or aspects that you think are missing in Region 8 that should be there to account. Signage, just preserving, facilities, features, all that kind of good stuff. Think about that as we move forward, as we discuss these recommendations, as we have these conversations of what you'd like to see, again, in the future. That's what the point of this plan is, it's really planning.
So we're gonna have one of these planners too, it's also you taking pictures of the screens, all these presentations will be available on the website. And you can have different writers class, we provided a sort of overview that has a lot of stuff written down. And as you go through these topics, we're reading through the papers and having documentation, have the reference for the meeting and for later reference. Guide.
Thank you.
So before we get too far into the 9 months, I do want to say one other thing. If you guys are hungry or need a lunch, feel free to do so anytime. We're all adults here. We do have a break open 7 o'clock though. So we are going to have some good conversation, break out groups in the morning. But before we get to that point, vision outline, how's it? Let's set that a little bit more broadly. So the first, I like to give analogies, sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad, so we'll hope it's not a good one. Since you brought pizza in, let's talk about pizza. There are 3 main aspects of land use planning when we discuss the future of zoning land use and development policy areas. So let's start with like the crust or the base, the development policy area, the foundation. There are a few different types. You have gluten-free crust, you can have non-gluten-free. And the development policy area broadly identifies what different areas are. And I'll give an example of what's originating, but there are examples that originate has to kind of help direct land use. And that's where the sauce, red sauce, white sauce, spicy red sauce, kind of get a little more specific. And here, same kind of, you're gonna have, your commercial, just broadly commercial, low density residential, rural, low medium density residential, industrial, and maritime. I think there's good in this. But again, it's a little more specific, but there's more. And then finally, at the top, cheese, pepperoni sauce, that's the zone. So within, let's take commercial, for example. We have the commercial land use, but then there's different types of commercial zoning. You guys C1, C2, C3, C4. And each different zone category provides different opportunities for different uses allowed. Well, the land use itself just says broadly, hey, this is going to be a commercial land. The zoning narrows it up a little more. Is it going to be a bank or is it going to be a Walmart? So that's something we won't get into too much. We'll talk more about as we get to the zone conversations. But you don't need to know really the difference between C4 and C1 or R5 and R1. It's really just important to think, well, what do you want in these areas? And then we will work together to figure out how best to get that. And how do these change? The region plan. this process, if there's areas you see that you think should be recommended a different way, now's the time to step up and really have this conversation. Well, for example, this area, you know, it's neighborhood preservation. Maybe we should focus in on to be a little more, a different type of zone policy. Or if this is land use, it's a commercial zone, but maybe it should be a residential zone, or maybe it should be something more industrial. So that, those conversations are gonna take place, not tonight, not tomorrow, but in the coming months, specifically it's regulation. Is there a question?
Yeah, going back to your pizza analogy, at what point, who gets to say that's too many toppings?
So, there's so much land. There's just so much land, and each parcel is identified. as zoning cap. So, it's really just, we have to assign a zoning category to each parcel. If you want each parcel to be a different zoning category, we have limited zoning categories. So that.
No, I guess it's like if we zone something as like commercial, let's say. At what, and we just keep packing it full of commercial. At what point does somebody say, hey, that's too much commercial in that one zone? How much, when you put too many toppings in one little slice?
So,
It's the best way to say it.
so the zoning category does provide limitations. When we get to talk about zoning specifically, we'll have a zoning expert here, talk about setbacks, height limitations, and stuff of that nature.
Okay.
So if like, just for example, the Kmart event, the former Kmart, there was limitation to how high the home could be built, but it's still get more people used. Right. So again, I don't know. Say it was a C4, there's limitations. C4 is more intense than C1, so you can do more things by fewer setbacks and stuff of that nature. But again, really thinking about what we want to do is, do you want to bank or do you want to walk? That's the kind of question we want to ask you, or we want to hear from.
Yeah, I guess my question was, and it's on Route 3, okay? I was driving down it the other day, and there's another strip mall being built there. That place cannot handle, the traffic and everything cannot handle another strip mall. So who gets to say, no more strip mall?
That comes down to the zoning, it's through this process, it's through the comprehensive zoning process. How to determine what zoning categories or should be recommended for certain.
Okay.
Is there language in the zoning, so I know the zoning, you would look at like how much parking is available and all of that kind of stuff, is there language that also looks at like the road?
Yeah.
How much the road can accommodate, or is that something we could encourage to be added to the zoning?
Yeah, there's some, things from all the facilities, that have been taking a lot of consideration, regarding the development processes. But then there are some, for example, C4, it's highway commercial. Typically speaking, it's along major thoroughfares. You're not gonna find C4 necessarily in, the back road areas, right, or yeah. So again, so in a way it does, there are specific languages we can talk about later. But if you think there's something missing, this is again an opportunity for recommendation. So it's very important to have these ideas and have these thoughts, to really think, does the county do this? Do I want the county to do this? Maybe we should put it.
So I was thinking about language in the terms of, is there current language, or could there be language in terms of when we get to capacity such as that there's some type of sinking fund that developers have to pay into to further build out infrastructure to support, because otherwise the infrastructure just can't handle it.
There are, but I'm not sure, that's not my expertise. I have to talk to our zoning team about that more, and we'll be doing it once, years from now. But impact fees do exist, and in theory, they're supposed to help offset the cost of the roadways and stuff like that. So develop policy here. This is a clip of Region 8, as you can see, it's this big, essentially green area. That's an outline in front. Within that outline, there are actually three, but I'll focus on two for a second. Develop policy areas. Rural agricultural, which is the green, which is, as you can see, high majority of Region 8. And these are essentially just areas of very limited development. I don't want to emphasize limited, right? Limited doesn't mean none, but it does mean limited. And I'm not going to read you the definition, these are out of the plan for you. I would highly recommend you look at it again. The rural agriculture is designed to preserve the rural agricultural aspect of the area. So as you can see here, most of Region 8 is rural ag. Unless there's a big conversation, again, as we mentioned at the kickoff, we don't anticipate changing of slowly keep South County rural through this process. And this reflects South County being rural. While you can still have minor different, a little bit of commercial, essentially a little bit of industrial, stuff of that nature. Generally speaking, the development is the one.
So that's part of the plan. Would it be in the scope of this group to recommend that some of this be codified a little bit past that? For example, Emily had brought up like the urban rural demarcation line in Baltimore County. You know, those sorts of things where they're actually kind of, I want to say in stone in the county ordinances. You know, if this group says, hey, we want to, you know, preserve everything south of this particular line or something like that, is that something that would be in the scope of this group to recommend?
Yeah, I think any recommendation, most recommendations are on the table. There are a few things that you can't necessarily touch, but generally speaking, I think any idea you have, let's get on paper, right?
Okay.
We have a big review process. We have to go through the Office of Law, other departments. So if there's something we can't do, it'll be caught. We can refer to it. But
And also added, as we move more into ranks and zones after the new year, and we'll give you a briefing paper on more details about kind of the layers of protection that are built into the county code.
Okay.
Where sewer services provided for the fund area, the layers that currently are built in that provide that protection. We don't have that demarcation line based on the system. We'll more information to better understand that when we talk about, it's a recommendation about trying to keep that and then. Okay.
Question, is this plan a 5, 10, 20-year plan or?
yeah, about 20-year plans. So we just adopted the plan 2040, 2021. And that's supposed to be a 20 plan. It's supposed to have carried on through as well. Just more.
Okay.
So moving on, as you can see, most of it is green, most of it is the rural ag. The little areas, and we have to point out, a little bit down here, and over here, it's neighborhood preservation. Again, the more of this, where development is limited. Okay, not none, but limited. Okay, but it's designed to really, for neighborhood preservation, essentially what it says. Making sure areas are, communities, not necessarily downtown DC or downtown. But you can have some commercial, you can do some industrial uses there as well. Again, it's more like the public. And then finally, the next thing, the third one here. There's a third DPA in Region 8. It's critical corridor, and as you can see, it's strict whatever's south of that purple. And I want to put it up there and get scared about it, because this is the more intense, more from the zone area. This is right along the water. So again, while there is a few little parcels there, it's not really. I think most of. And this is the area where there's more, there's a lot of existing development. You drive Central Avenue, you go up Solomon Island Road, down.
Can you identify those yellow areas for us real quick?
Yes, so. Yeah, this is Waste Corner, I'll talk about that in the next slide. And then over here's like Edgewater. And that's a, yeah. But again, most of it's, again, rural action, or pretty much more people's down.
This one, is this 301? That's my Staples corner is my guess. This is 301, it's
No,
somehow coming off 301 towards, there's a road here, but I'm not sure what the road name is.
That's 214.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's probably the Owens. Yeah.
Yeah.
Renditions golf course. What that is. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that area.
Thank you.
So.
Zoom is great.
So, for only those center. What's a village center? These areas are throughout the county, and they're typically really designed to be district, mobile, sometimes a mix of uses. And for these are really, kind of vision, what do you want to see there? A lot of these village centers are going to have, hopefully, village sector plans in the future, really focusing on the specifics of just that. So one of the big things that we can talk about as Region 18 is what, generally speaking, do you want to see here? What are some ideas, suggestions, really focus here? And again, we'll talk about this more in detail. This will be a great portion of the meeting coming up in a couple of months. But again, I just wanted to point out that there is the one village center in Region.
How long has it had that designation? Yeah.
Since it was in 2024, right? Yeah, so that's technically adopted.
Okay, that's fairly,
Fairly.
okay. But certainly not a village center.
Some of them, need to be revised. So, and obviously,
And we're allowed to add others to our wishes.
we can actually have a conversation. And then the plan land use, again, I just wanted to put a couple things here. This is in brief, this is in the plan 2040 document. It's maybe kind of hard to see. These are the definitions, all the different land use category designations. I just wanted to show again that today, right, conversation we can have, but again, plan 2040, just about a couple years ago, later did all the real foundation, later great groundwork for land use. And we're not really trying to redo it, trying to build off. Well, we can have conversations here. If there is something we think should change, let's bring it to the table. But again, I want to emphasize from a staff point of view, we're not really trying to tear down and rebuild. We want to build on top. So that brings us to the community mapping event, breakout session. Towards the back of the room, you can see there are a couple tables. And there are maps on each table. One map has the region 8 as a whole. The other maps are broken down from north, the northern part of region 8, the central part of region 8, and then the southern part of region 8. And what we want to do for you all is to identify a couple of different aspects, as well as a couple of different potential areas of so when you get back to the table, there are two sheets of stickers. One is red, one is blue. And there's some post-its. If you guys would like to put 3 green and 3 red circles on the map, anywhere you want, where you think where red is there are challenges or opportunities to do something better, while green, something you really like, something you really want to build off of, or you want to see more of in your community. And there's on the post note, you can kind of write a quick note if you'd like. What I would recommend you do, if you take a dot, you want to go ahead, A1 or E1, error 1, put it on there, and then on your post note, E1 equals this, write your notes so we can identify it easy. I go back and forth. That'd be really helpful. This is really that's why I'm going to do pretty broad, not give a whole lot of direction. I really want to see what you guys come up with. When you identify a challenge, we're not trying to find a solution, right? I want to really emphasize that. Just identify. And we can have a conversation maybe tonight, maybe later. We want to see where you all are thinking. What can we talk about in a later meeting that you identify tonight? So for about the next half hour, 45 minutes, you guys want to get up, kind of walk around, have conversations with one another while you're back there, and make sure you hit all three maps. Really try to get involved, and even if you're not familiar with one area, that's okay. But have a conversation and see what your fellow colleagues can provide information. And I'll call everybody back up around 7 o'clock.
All right.
Oh, that was sorry about that.
Well, no, it's past, it's not too far.
I'll get you information.
It just for everybody's, open the doors, so I get a little cooler here, if it's too loud or whatever, let me know. Speak up when the door gets hot. Well,
So I'm gonna get wetter. But I'm not even.
so thank you all for participating. I think there's a lot of good comments back there, a lot of red dots, some of you green dots. So to help, with what we just did, I think we should kind of maybe share a few ideas and see. Had similar ideas, different ideas, and that way we can kind of get, an understanding of different communities. So one thing I would, ask is just to want to start, they can kind of, explain what one dot they put down, ideally one of each maybe, and maybe describe the community. What do they see, for example, Davidson, what is Davidson? What are all these areas? So we can maybe just do that for a few, and we can show kind of maybe ask by raising hands, some people agree, or there's a different idea that. Does anybody want to start?
Anna does. No, it's up to Anna. She's our leader.
Okay, I'm happy to start.
Had more dots than anybody up there, I think.
Okay, so, let's see, for the areas of the southernmost part, of the county, of Region 8, sorry, I was focused on preservation, and so looking at Wason's Corner and all the way down to where the current grain elevator is, it's county owned. Just really thinking about how to use these spaces for the preservation of not only the land, but the history, the heritage, so agriculture, the vernacular architecture, potentially a museum, and maybe repurposing if the grain elevator is no longer viable, which apparently is what has been determined. I've not been involved in that part personally, but that's what I've been told. That perhaps there's another use for an area for preservation, for learning, a museum of some sort, and an educational center for ag and learning how to do the things that have always been done in South County. So from raising your own food, your own livestock, to preserving food, to cherishing all of the history. So some of those buildings perhaps don't know where that money comes from, but that's kind of the vision. And of course, with Wasted Corner itself, with that new overlay in 2021, we said, that new overlay of Wasted Corner, revitalization of that area in a way that honors the heritage, if possible, in a way where you get to see what the vernacular architecture was versus some kind of sprawl. People like to go to places that have culture and a sense of place, sense of village, sense of belonging, and that's what I think Wasted Corner could potentially become.
I'm kind of fixated on Wasted Corner too, because I live not too far from there. And it's, I'm just gonna say trashy, with that liquor store and everything like that, and I think what Anna said is something that would fit in really good there. It's kind of like a community center, or, I mean, where I'm from, we have the St. Mary's County Farm Museum. I have a whole bunch of equipment down there, like a hog head, stuff like that. That would fit in perfect down there.
What about a restaurant? You know, I feel like they're limited in terms of our food choices,
So I don't have to drive to.
unless we go to deal.
Imagine a real farm to table.
It's actually a pretty good location, because you're right, you're in the sliver between two counties, between two large counties.
Absolutely. You got,
Yeah.
you know, neighbors coming through there.
Right.
Even just a coffee or ice cream place to walk to go for a walk, pick up something, continue walking.
So speaking of walking, so we have and this is something to think about when you're talking about parks and open space. And I think all too often people get into the impression that it's gotta be big, it's gotta have a lot of fields, it's gotta have parking to be effective. We've got a little park down the road near the Center of Friendship, which is not a big area. It was saved from development several years ago. It's a little pond, it's set down on a slope. There's a nice walking trail around it. I'll even skate there in the winters when it freezes over, and there's no parking. But the community can use it, and it's walkable from the community. And I think it's not a huge area of land, and I think when, you know, if the county's doing land acquisitions, obviously you have to look at, you know, what's it gonna cost, how much it's gonna be, and I think, you know, a network of smaller parks can be very effective in certain areas, and it's just something to keep in mind.
So I think Abby has some ballpark too, like, so-
Yeah, so I had brought up, where I live in Eagles Passages, it's right off of like Rutland Road and St. George Farmer Road. In a community called Graverly, there's a Kings Branch Flat Creek that, Arundel County just put $2 million into restoring the creek and putting trails around there. And what I was talking about was, the road in the neighborhood that leads up to it is a public road, it's maintained by the county, and no parking signs were put along the side near the entrance. And it was something I've seen just on their Facebook page that they've been trying to get parking spots for, but what I was asking was, are those even legitimate? It tells you nowhere if you were to be towed, where you'd be towed to, no such thing
Is
as
this for no
fine.
parking signs or every 15 feet apart? Like, there's a million of them?
Yeah, they put like 10 up, and
Yeah.
I mean, I've lived in Eagles Passages my
Yeah.
entire life, I run a lot, so I've been
always
running through that
wondered
neighborhood
why
forever, and they appeared about 2 years ago.
I always wondered why there's so many no parking signs there.
Have you been back there?
Not for a while.
Yeah, I don't know where they just appeared, but there's a brown like park sign there that talks about accessing the trail, and it goes pretty far back along St. George Barber Road. And that's just something kind of talking about small spaces.
Yeah.
It's, you know, unfortunately, it's like not within walking, you know, where
Yeah.
Davisville set up is things aren't within walking distance to one another. So even where I live, it's like a mile and a half to walk there. So thinking about how the county owns up, the county's putting money into it, how it's a public place, how can people access it? The first, you know, half mile leading up to it, they put no parking signs on it, don't seem, you know.
I don't know.
I'm just
He's asking to
saying,
see if they're legitimate.
those don't seem like.
Yeah.
Like, did Anne Arundel County truly put those up?
No, the county didn't. I'm familiar with that neighborhood. The neighbors put it up.
Can they do that? It's a
There's
public
a-
road.
A wealthy landowner who bought a big property at the end of the street, and people used to park there. And because the no parking signs were in the area close to the park. And then he put up no parking signs, and then they have no parking.
But none of them are legitimate
I
because it's a
don't
public road.
believe that they were county.
Yeah, so it's just interesting because like we're like, I guess you could technically park starting like up, there's like a large hill there up the hill. And it's a short easement into the park, but that's just something I talked about in addition to, as you were kind of mentioning, adding more walking ways. There's a lot of bikers in and around, I'm sure most of South County. How do we make that safer? We expand roadways, widen them at least to make it safer. In addition to kind of what I was talking about and I had seen in some of the slides, talking about making just the road safer overall. You know, we had talked about Staples Corner, as well as the 424 Central Avenue thing. I was talking about 424 and Central and Rutland Road. People come around that corner going 60 miles per hour. I make the left turn onto Rutland Road. People come into the lane and then swerve out as soon as they see I'm stopped. Even just adding like on the pavement, like left turn only or something like that, or I suggested a light that goes on during rush hour in the morning and rush hour in the afternoon, not all day, but just something. It's pretty dangerous and along, that's what we said, other intersections, and I'm sure along Route 2 coming off of some of those roads. And
That's a state road, right? Yeah. So,
State roads, there's county roads, there's transportation.
yeah.
We can always provide recommendations, but unfortunately, they control the state roads. State, sometimes they're responsive, sometimes less so. So, we'll even talk about that later. But to continue on what we did tonight, Peggy, I saw you right up.
Because I had trouble being quiet. My focus is mostly the southern part of the county, or the southern part of the region. The most important thing for me is to encourage the current agriculture operations to continue, whether they are very small operations or whether it is a matter of supporting farmers who are cobbling together multiple sites so that they can have a viable full-time farming operation. Hobby farming is is great. And I have a tremendous amount of respect for people who are able to make a full-time business out of farming. It's tough to do. Tobacco was great for this area because you could survive on a very small parcel of land with tobacco. The folks that used to do that kind of got left behind a little bit with the evolution of agriculture. So the big thing for me in the most southernmost part of Region 8 is to maintain as much agriculture as we can. I think that if I'm just throwing all my stuff out there, I think that there is a dearth of transportation support for Wastes Corner. So I think that it's very difficult in an area like this to make public transportation viable. But I think if you're going to have a town, a village development, that there has to be a way for people to live there and get to jobs. There has to be a way for people to get to the village. I think that the change in school hours has been very challenging for people trying to commute on Route 2. The Southern Middle School, Lothian Elementary, Lothian Beltway adds 20 minutes or more to people's driving time coming out of South County. And as one who does commute using a back road, the high school kids have discovered the back roads. And I have now been passed on Owensville-Sudley Road, which isn't possible. So if we don't address the traffic on the major roads, people are gonna get hurt. And I think that the South County the South County Rec Center needs a lot of love. And I'll be quiet.
No, that's great, yeah. Not to cut this conversation short, but to keep moving, I think we've heard a lot of good stuff. There's a lot of good stuff on paper, and I know there's a lot of stuff that we haven't shared on. But one thing that is consistent with everything I've said is that this plan is going to be designed for everybody, right? We've talked a little bit about every area of Region 8. And that's how this plan should be, is a plan for everybody. Not a plan for you, not a plan for me, not a plan for executive commitment, a plan for everybody. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing moving forward, making these steps forward for the Region 8 document. To make sure everybody has the best foot forward and it starts getting people. So keep that in mind as we move forward and we put words to paper. So vision statement, everything we've heard tonight, we're going to incorporate some way, shape, and form into a vision statement. It's we've heard a lot about accessibility, safety, heritage, our ag history, and all that's very important. And I think we can incorporate all pieces of that into a vision statement. Next slide. So what is it? Here's a quick 4 or 5 bullet point of what it is, very broad. It's the key element of the community. You know, it's the very first thing that you debate what's coming up in. But it really asks the question, where are we headed? Where are we going? What do we want? And one question I always ask when we sit down and start to write this, you know, when I look back, you know, it's 2040, year 2040, I look back, what has vision mean? What do I envision it being? And if we answer that question, that's going to help us to create and answer what is the Region 8's vision statement. So this is just an example of the Plan 2040 vision statement. It's in the plan, I'm not going to read it out loud, but this is what within the group we created within the Space Advisory Committee and ultimately adopted. And we'll have something very similar. It'll be your ideas, your thoughts, your desires while reading it. But as you can kind of notice too, it's pretty brief, right? But it gives a lot of information at the same time. So how do we move forward? Where are we going? And so with that, I'm going to pass it over to Mike to kind of talk about the vision the initial, vision summary document that we created based on your kind of results from the.
So, as we mentioned earlier, we did a lot of public engagement earlier this year, asking people what they love about their area, what things they want to be improved, similar to the questions we've been asking you in the previous one. And from the information, we kind of distill key themes of ideas that come up, like Eric just talked about, preserving the rural agricultural heritage. And we distill those into a set of elements, what could be incorporated into a vision statement, start to get community feedback on it. This is not intended to be wordsmith like that, 10, 20, 40, succinct, very well crafted statement, and rather like, what are the ideas, the topics, the elements that you want to see reflected in the vision statement? So we put this on the website. We're also taking this out to communities that may not have internet access, like to some remote home parks, and asking for their feedback. But we're presenting now the input that we got from posting it online. We got 417 responses, basically through the month of October, on this set of statements. And what this shows is, what that element was that we actually get to rate. The idea that we rate it on a scale of 1 to 5, is the most important. It's like these are all good things. So it's not like I want a healthy environment, but I don't want housing. It's kind of, but by asking to rate 1 to 5, it gives them, but what's the most important things? What are those things we need to prioritize? And so what these horizontal bar charts show is that scale voting from 1 to 5, 5 being they thought it was the most, it's a very high importance, 1 being very low importance. And so the colors are, the dark green is 5, the lighter green is 4, so it's important, but not very important. 3 is a neutral, 2 is not important, and 1 is not important at all. So as you read these, you kind of give you a quick visual of a lot of green means a lot of public support for it. When you see the colors more mixed, it's more mixed public sentiment. So resonant with what you have said in previous meetings, these ideas about keeping South County rural, conserving agricultural, natural, and cultural heritage, all with very high, this kind of big overarching ideas. And on the right hand side, we gave you guys the same survey. And so here's your scores too. The average of this group gave these statements 4s and 5s as well. So I think there's some good consistency emerging there. Then we're going to kind of history and environment issues. We've already heard a lot about in our conversations here. Again, conserving forests, farms, fields, and wetlands is very high rating for the public. Got a 5 rating average for this committee too. And similarly, water quality, preserving, supporting that. The historical resources got a little bit more mixed. I don't think that's to say that people don't think it's important, it's just kind of not as important as the rural landscape in general. We guys want to focus on land use and housing, thinking about how we manage the landscape, how to provide housing for the residents of the area. And you can see again, I mentioned the rural landscape. We should be focusing growth in areas that have infrastructure supported, and in large part that may be outside of this region, in the northern parts of Canada that have more robust infrastructure. There were a couple of comments about housing. And it's kind of a little bit nuanced because, like we've said to you multiple times, we're not expecting a lot more housing growth in this area. We've got a lot of policies saying it shouldn't happen. But we want to think about the housing that does come. Should it all be McMansions on large lots, or should we try to set up policies to allow more diversity of housing, things for aging in place, more different housing types to support the different life stages and income level stages. Like it's hard to communicate in a one sentence thing. As we get further in our discussions, we'll dig deeper into that and we'll present the public with some more, flushed out ideas around the housing pocket as well. But not surprisingly, the housing gets kind of mixed reviews there. You see some green support, but also some yellows and oranges and saying, wait. We're saying more housing in this area. I'm not, not supportive.
I thought you phrased it well.
Thanks.
No, because you have limited housing options for all ages.
We want to put something that's thinking about wastes, as kind of the one kind of commercial area that seems like could be revitalized and have some new vitality to it. And then again, kind of, as we focus on the limited growth we expect to have, focusing on the areas that already are developed, revitalizing the land that's already been touched, and not, clearing trees or forests or farming. Somewhat mixed, but this group, I think, has kind of deep understanding what we're talking about with that, and we're treating it as an average of 5. Supporting the agricultural economy. Very high ratings, got a 5 here. I think some of those yellows and reds come from other important streaks of the culture of South County, just like government helping the ag economy, like, hey, maybe the government shouldn't just do any darn thing, get out of my business. That theme certainly comes through in some of the comments we get whenever we have surveys and questionnaires in South County. You're familiar with that. The opportunities, more opportunities to buy locally produced fresh foods, certainly gets high rating, but again, a little bit of, hey, is this the realm of government to try to push this, or is it the private market to take care of it? In the environment, we also wanted to mention the mining sites, landfills. That's going to be a hot topic. We'll talk more about that in depth in our next meeting. We're going to bring up that idea of saying, what happens when these things close? How do we think about the future of these? Again, relatively high support. We did get some pushback in some of the comments of saying, yes, I want to see those replanting, but don't tell me it's going to be, say, renewable energy. That maybe that's too specific at this point in the planning process to be talking about. We'll talk about solar as we go through this as well. I know it's a really hot topic in the area. I kind of put that in there as an idea that when people think of solar on landfills and over old mining sites as a potential, keep it off farms for industry. And then we get into transportation. As you guys have discussed, a lot of the comments that we've got in the previous public feedback, we had that feedback math exercise we're going to do digitally, kind of what you guys did on the paper map. A lot of the transportation comments down here really focus on safety. In other parts of the county, it's a lot more about like capacity and speed and let's move through things. Here, what we're most commonly hear is, hey, this is a dangerous intersection. Congestion is real, it's mentioned, but safety always gets prioritized. So we noted a few of those key intersections that we've heard comments about a lot in the public, and you guys have identified some others. We do get some mixed reviews in that. I'm kind of surprised at that one. It may just be that people are saying, hey, that's not the intersection I'm worried about. So I think that intersection is important for me because you mentioned Staples Corner, but I'm down in Lothian. And then flood risk on the bridges, especially things like around the Texan. Again, relatively mixed support, but generally, positive numbers, and this group already all these high. And then the walkability. This is one that's also, I think, hard to couch for people in a succinct little statement for a survey. Because we do get the pushback of saying, hey, we live in a rural area, you're not going to bike from Lothian to Annapolis on a daily basis to go grocery shopping. But when we kind of unpack and say, well, what about, accessibility, we talked about around mentioned earlier today, wastes. You make those areas more walkable. Can you make it that way kids can more safely walk and bike to school? I think those are good conversations we can dive deeper into to have more specific strategies in this group to say, yeah, the walkability is an important topic and the location of it is important. It's not going to be bike lanes everywhere. So we get mixed reviews on that and we'll put it as a broad statement. But I think it's kind of feedback we got in the public too. Yes, it's important, but don't pretend we're going to have bike lanes all over something. Public transportation gets mixed. Again, there's some of the council always say, it's a dream, you can't do it down here. It's not compatible with the rural landscape. The county has been trying to innovate on how to meet the needs of low income, disabled, elderly people in South County with the South County Call and Ride. We'll talk more about that when we dive into transportation after the year. The brief statement gets kind of mixed reviews, but then we get to check out recreations and community access. A lot of love for public parks. Though we do get some pushback about saying, again, should we have more public parks versus just kind of keeping privately owned lands conserved as farms and working forests? And I'm really surprised at number 19 about the idea about new parks and rec facilities, and 20 for community centers being at NIC. Especially the community center. We talked about a little bit tonight from our mapping exercise that the South County Davidsonville Family Rec Centers are in pretty poor shape. There are a couple words that are in that sentence though, like diverse, that again, I think for some people in South County, that's a trigger word, of saying, what, you know, what are you trying to say with this? So I think that led to some of the mixed reviews. And then public services, we talk about schools and public safety. Those are kind of no-brainers that everyone supports that. Those are the ones that we get feedback on questions saying, this is really the question. Of course, we want rules and safety, but we also we need to make sure we put these things in there that we're thinking comprehensively about our communities and all the resources they need.
But wait, I have a,
Yeah,
I noticed that the average of the SAC
yeah.
was 4.999 for everything. Is that typically how this works? Because it was all 5s and only 2 4s for this group here. Everything was important.
Keep in mind, you volunteered for this position, so you are gonna give a lot more, you're gonna care a lot, because you care to be here. And, none of these, not that the average person in there necessarily cares as much as you do, but you're the one devoting multiple hours monthly plus homework, so I would be caught off guard if it wasn't, right, because you guys are so, because you do care. So, which is great, and so yeah, it's a much smaller sample size too. 15 people, we had 13 respondents, so thank you all, which is great. I rarely get 15 SAC members to do anything, so, prove me wrong, please.
And it is, it's nice to see. I think there is a lot of cohesiveness already in this group. There's a lot of kind of shared ideas already emerging, which is awesome. And then two, like that is one of the challenges of regular vision statements. This one is really nice and succinct. The one that we're on Region 9 kind of became the laundry list of all those elements. And then wordsmith in just the right way that sounds like how you say it in DL or church. And that'll be something that we'll struggle with as a group. Like, okay, some people will see a vision statement and say, hey, if I can't put on a bumper sticker, it's it's too long. And others who say, but you can't leave out this, you can't leave out that. So that'll be kind of one tension you can wrestle with every time.
Yeah, I'm just worried is the old adage of if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. It all can't be the priority. So, and if we all vote 5 on everything, then it's just one of those things I think we all need to think about. Like, we have groupthink going on.
It's not gonna have one different. But it can give broad overview ideas and direct, and that's the point of the vision statements. The direction, what direction we're heading. And for the rest of this meeting, which we have about half an hour left, if or longer, is really just for you guys to have a conversation and staff to listen, take some notes, really try to incorporate these ideas for so like future meetings, a lot of conversations are going to be you guys about your future, about the future of Vision 8. Staff's going to take a step back on this. We're going to take notes. And then we're going to go back to the office, type these up, and then share them with you to make sure we heard you correctly. And we'll have a conversation about it. If you say, hey, we heard that, that's perfect, we keep moving forward. Or if you say, hey, no, you missed this, we meant this, we can have that conversation. We'll hammer that out. We really want this committee to really help drive this force. Staff is going to do the physical writing, so you don't have to worry about waking up at 2 a.m. like a college paper to knock it out before midnight or before the next morning. But that's our job. You bring the ideas, we'll bring the words. So I guess with that, if I'll kick it to Anna, if you maybe want to start off the conversation about what's important, what do you see? When you hear vision statement read, hey, what's the first couple of things that come to mind?
Okay, great. So I think we should have a roundtable discussion if you're open to that and just kind of put out there. The way I see it is we kind of put out like a sentence of keywords that come up for you, and then we can go from there. And I'm going to write down a bunch of notes too. So who would like to kind of throw out some thoughts that they think are like the overarching, most important aspects of, and one thing that I was thinking about before this meeting is, our ancestors and or people who came before us in this land, whether they're our ancestors or not, they had a philosophy, the Native people, and that was that they wanted to make decisions based upon the next 7 generations. And so, when you think about regenerative lifestyles and how do we preserve and or carry on, or what do we wish for our children's children's children? And we think that way, then I feel like we come up with something that it means a lot to all of us, and it means a lot to whoever does come here after us. That's what I was kind of thinking about. And it helped me kind of think about what would I wish for if I could be here, you know, for my children's 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 children, or your children's 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 children. Like, what is that? Oh my God. So with that,
Okay.
you volunteered to last night.
I'll be a shy one. Does everybody know Janice over here? She's my daughter's first parent. And she's a wonderful lady. Preserve our world culture, preserve our history. More safety in transportation. Redevelop the dead zones. That's all I have.
I think one of the things we haven't talked about when we talk about our cultural heritage is the equine heritage.
Yeah.
You know, the horse farms, and the extent to which those are.
Do you need any?
Important, generating. Yeah, and talking about, you know, some sort of museum, agricultural museum or something like that in South County. I don't know if you know Bill Eversfield, he lives on Route 2, yeah. So he took me to the last working tobacco farm, down on Jewel Road, I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago. And it was fascinating to me. Now, I'm not a tobacco user and I don't want to promote tobacco use, but it was an integral part of this county and the state and the state of Virginia for many, many years. And I think that part of our history should be preserved. Okay. You know, we can't ignore that, you know, that was part and parcel of this economy. And the ports, you know, what were they exporting back to the old world? So forth. But you know, last time I came up with the phrase green line. So now I've got another new phrase that I've come up with. We are a flyover county for commuters. You know, when you're taking a plane to the West Coast, you fly over states. You look down and go, okay, I wonder where that is or what that river is. And for the thousands of cars that go up and down Route 2, you know, they're going from point A to point B and they're not stopping any place in between, for better or worse. But we have to deal with the consequences of that. That's my 2 cents.
I'd like to get something in there about how we want the area to have the services or access to the services that people need, but without it being overdeveloped.
Yeah.
But like a Route 2. I know I lived in Edgewater when we first moved here, and we saw what was happening to Route 2.
Yeah.
And we got I think we need to have something in there that, you know, we will, and I think redevelopment is really good because we don't need to be knocking down trees and bulldozing farms to get some of the things that we need. Or just, you know, be thinking about.
Yeah, I mean, I think the services need to be scalable, you know, I'll kind of use that term. It's like, okay, you say public transportation, we don't want subway down here, we don't want any bus signs.
No,
And it's, well, it's,
place to go eat.
yeah, and I think that's important to point out, because otherwise I've seen what happens and it just snowballs in a bad way, you know.
I think a key word.
Appropriately
is,
thought.
sustainability. Sustainability and, you know, 2040, you know, there may not be any internal combustion engines left. You know, the EV charging stations, perhaps.
I ain't getting no damn electric tractor.
Don't be surprised, okay? But, you know, I know there's kind of a consensus about solar farms and solar power here, but, you know, that's the future. And that's gonna have to be incorporated somewhere, if not here, you know, somewhere in the surrounding area, on the old mine sites, landfill sites and things like that. But I think that would be a consideration. 2040, we'll have, robo taxis or Waymo driving up. Now, I don't know if you guys have ever seen Waymo.
Fine, I was just out in Arizona.
Phoenix, yeah, Phoenix and San Francisco. It's amazing.
They self-drive.
It's a robot taxi.
There's no one to talk,
Carrier.
Yes.
driving all around. You know,
So I'll say that, well said, when you open saying that it's not one of us, but it's truly all of us. And so I think I'll put this at a high level for me to say, I think the promise of the vision is a region where that embraces growth, change, but also remembers the uniqueness of the region, but also prioritizes what I would say, the quality of life for all. So I think ultimately for me, when I think about a vision for this region, I would say that it's one that it remembers the legacy, it nurtures the community that we all live in, but it also supports sustainable growth. So I'm hopeful that we'll come together with a plan that essentially gets us there in the sense of that as we put this together, we build a future to not only have a vital region, but one that really welcomes a future generation to enjoy a really healthy community.
You're beautiful, man. I can see your aura. And I got one word to summarize that. That's unity, unity. You're good, man.
Yeah. I think it's important to define the word growth. I work for the US Census Bureau, and I will tell you right now, this country, if it weren't for immigration, we'd be in kind of a negative population. So just growth for growth's sake is not a good thing. I know that it happens a lot because one county wants to attract more businesses than another county or what have you. But I've seen those battles go on. You have winners and losers, but ultimately everybody's a loser down the road. When you're talking about 7 generations, that Wawa that everybody wanted on the corner, that's bad news. Super fun site for, 2 generations down the road. And I think we really need to be careful when you talk about growth. Do we need the growth? Or are we talking about growth that's more, okay, let's change with the times, make adjustments, and that sort of thing.
Right.
When I moved to this county 30 years ago, and I came from a situation where I was heavily involved in land use. My mother was the mayor of the city I grew up in. The city did not have its own zoning authority. The county had the zoning authority, and the state had a lot of property in the city as well. And it was a constant battle, just a constant battle, because those forces at that level had no interest in the community. They were just looking at the bottom line of the money. And yeah, and it was just a constant battle. And that's what we kind of have to watch out for. So I think when you talk about growth, you want to look at growth that's good. You don't want to view it as inevitable. I hate the term smart growth, but I go back with going anyways time to go there. It's more like, let's not do growth for growth's sake. If we want to do growth, let's do it for the right reasons.
Right. That's a good point. So I'll add to that in the sense of when I say growth, I think about, for instance, I spent some time in Singapore, and they did a lot of development for whether it's retail or whatever it was, but they did it from the sense of accessibility, that all would have accessibility and no one would have to spend hours trying to access whatever the need was. So I'm thinking about accessibility for all when I say growth from that perspective.
Okay. I think you mentioned a good thing, Mike, is, counties need tax revenue.
Yeah.
Developers need developments to build. Realtors need product to sell. And, this is part of the issues that we've got to deal with to be able to accommodate everyone out there, without putting unnecessary burdens on our community.
I mean, the last thing we want is the county looking at that and saying, hey, we get a federal prison that, we can get a huge amount of tax money. Let's dump that out in South County. They got the land. You know, that's the type of thing we want to avoid at all costs.
Deportation camps.
Well,
So I
And that's
think,
why Route 3 looks like it's looking, is because, you know, they, prior administration, oh,
what's it gonna look
get
like?
more
in
tax
September?
revenue. Businesses don't pay that, you know, commercial development doesn't pay as much in, you know, in tax revenue, and then they get offsets, and if they build these developments in the streets, just get.
But I mean, on that note though, you know, and we've had a lot of talk about town centers like license or bringing certain services. If you incentivize the right businesses and keep it narrow, it can really work.
Great, I think Peggy was sort of.
I am looking at Region 8. Region 8 requires very little from the county as far as services. And I am very cognizant that if we demand more, there will be the eye of Mordor is going to turn to Region 8 and say, we need more tax revenue. My focus for Region 8 is to support what is here. And that may sound like an anti-growth sentiment, and I don't mean for it to, because I do think that Wasons is right for the right kind of development. But very targeted, very micro development, very well thought out, because whatever you put in now, whatever business you incentivize to come in now is a private entity who 5 years from now can sell to somebody else. So I think that I think for Region 8, I want us to support what's here.
And the zoning goes with that business when they sell it, by the way, which is, you know, when we get to that part of it. Kind of paramount.
One thing we haven't talked about, and we can park this for later, but just in terms of kind of safety, you know, emergency services, fire, do we feel that we're covered in South County? Or are the fire trucks having to come from way far away? Does everybody feel?
I think,
We're certainly well.
Yeah.
in my mind.
I think we're fairly well covered, except for the
Yeah.
tanker truck that they manage.
I think it's more the police enforcement of traffic laws. In my mind, it's not existent.
And that's state roads.
And I can see.
That's state roads.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So when I moved out here 30 years ago, when I was getting homeowners,
Yeah.
one of the first questions is how close is the nearest fire hydrant? And I'm like, 20 miles? Yeah. And this is really interesting. So this is kind of something to keep in mind when we talk about our volunteer fire departments. And I've been donating to the Deal Volunteer Fire Department ever since this incident. The homeowners company basically said, well, if you have a fire department within 5 miles that has tanker trucks, you know, if you have no public water, then they'll cover you. And thank God the Deal Fire Chief said, yeah, okay, it's 5 miles as the crow flies, but it's 5 miles. But I think we have a pretty good network of fire stations down here. I mean, I haven't heard any complaints about lack of capacity.
Last time I had my woods on fire, they were there in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And you know what that was from? A push hog ran over an electric battery. Boom.
I was waiting for you ladies.
Sure, I'll add. So I definitely agree with what you guys mentioned in terms of the traffic safety. I think that has been a real big one for me from the beginning. You know, because we talk about preservation and, you know, what we like to see. And I think we all have expressed how stressed we feel at a lot of these intersections on our daily commute. But when you talk about the generations to come, I would like to see increased community connection and quality recreation. I just learned tonight about the Davidsonville wreck. I had no knowledge about that. I really love what they did in Annapolis with Pip Moyer and that indoor walking trail. I think that's beautiful for seniors so they don't have to go to Annapolis Mall before they open. And just ways to bring the community together. I think that's a form of growth. you know, when I moved there from Crofton, it was a big shift in terms of like the social thing. And I don't mean like going out to places, but just the neighboring community. It was just something special that I really miss. And I don't know where you go to get that there. So I would just add that.
Great, thank you. I think it's important when we're talking about the Wasons area and we talk about developing it, we also want to make sure we're not scaring anyone that we're going to displace people as we develop it, right? 'Cause there are communities there, and we want to serve both our needs as well as that community's needs. And I think in that location, definitely like sidewalks, the community center, there is infrastructure that could potentially make it happen with the buildings that are there. There is a lot of opportunity, but we definitely don't want to like scare people into thinking, oh, we're going to displace you. We're gonna like increase the cost of living so you can't continue to stay where you already are.
And I think that's where the term redevelopment comes in. You know, we want to work with what we've got first before we expand.
Is there any appetite for, marine recreational opportunities, a boat ramp? Okay, a public boat ramp.
Oh, on the production?
Well, either on the protection side, I mean, we have the little kayak ramp there, up at Wasons.
Yeah.
But public boat ramp, you've got to go down to Prince Frederick, or I don't even know if that's a public boat ramp or not, if you have to pay. There's one out there at the bridge.
Well, usually not would be on the bay, but if you're talking about the river.
Yeah, I'm talking maybe, the Severn River, okay, up there, we abut the Severn River. I don't know if there's any sort of opportunities to launch a boat up there. I mean, I got my boat over at your cousin's place or brother's place or whoever those guys are, the chain guys. But
EAA has a canoe, like, but you have to carry your canoe or kayak down to the river.
that's not me
Yeah.
anymore. I graduated from Boy Scouts a long time ago.
I'm not sure how much time we have left, but those who haven't spoken yet at much during this time.
I just think like, sort of similarly to what's been said, like preservation of the landscape that is Region 8 and, you know, support of a thriving rural economy while also looking at redevelopment and revitalization of existing developed areas in the region. So that you're sort of kind of marry the two in terms of what other growth opportunities there might be. But I think redevelopment is super, super important because people always look for the low hanging fruit and just see an open field, which is less expensive and easy and quick to develop. But we can't think like that anymore.
And I would just want to add, we have some places where we have this big expanses of asphalt parking lot. I don't know if Kmart is part of it.
Kmart, yeah.
Just outside.
Just outside,
That's, yeah.
but things like that where, that parking lot's never been filled, they never needed that much space. But even when talking about Wason's Corner and development, there should be some green space there that you can get your ice cream cone and sit outside. They don't always have to be inside a business in order to socialize or be among other people.
There is a little tiny park hidden off of Sands Road.
Yeah.
If you go left on Sands Road from 408, full park up there.
Is that the one you talked about with?
No, that one I think because there's fishing there. I think, is that?
It's what?
Is there fishing at the park?
No, it's not near the water. Actually,
okay.
it's kind of behind, Roberts Sunoco station there. But it's that road that you can't make a left turn on or a right turn on or whatever, that weird little road that connects with Southern Maryland.
Like near the businesses, near, because even like if you think of that South River Colony Market that's behind Kmart, they just made just parking lot.
Yeah.
And now they've retrofit and tried to put a little bit of green space in there, or even at the town center.
Outside of it.
They have tried to put outdoor seating and people use it.
So I'm hearing
Yeah.
redevelopment in a style that honors the agricultural and the natural ecosystems of South.
Allows people to be outdoors together.
Yeah, and adding to that, I think kind of what I was mentioning earlier and what she was mentioning, just more opportunity for public spaces and parks and opening up land that's gonna be owned by the county for people to use and utilize, and kind of thinking about the next 7 generations of people, like at least in Davidsonville, like the housing there has become very expensive, like, selling and buying and so when talking about growth, I mean, realistically, the growth in South County won't happen as quickly because, I mean, there's not sewage and they're not, you know, all those things that they brought over to maybe Mayo where you see all those houses being built. Obviously, that's not the priority here, and I think that can be a good thing, but also when talking about growth and talking about opportunities for 7 generations in the future to live here, kind of thinking about accessibility in terms of just opportunity for people, you know, who maybe don't already live here, who'd like to come and live in this area and enjoy all the benefits that it has, so.
One of the solutions to that, potentially, this group thinks this might be something. I hear a lot of people say we want to promote the agricultural community and keep the farms farming. And there are a lot of young people in the FFA program at Southern High School, and there are students in other parts of the county that don't have FFA programs or agricultural programs that want to come to those programs. And there are also people who are going away to college and they're coming back and saying, I can't afford to farm here because I can't get on the land. So if we're looking for potential ways to have accessible housing and we want to support farming, potentially there could be the revitalization of the concept of that tenant house. But maybe now it's workforce housing in a very minimalistic way on farmland. Potentially, something to talk about. So there are opportunities already for a lot of farms if you have larger acreage where it's 1 house for 20 acres. But this wouldn't necessarily be something you could subdivide off and sell. It would have to be part of an agricultural operation.
And we talked about ADUs, I think, prior to.
Yeah. So that would allow a young person who wants to come back and get into agriculture potentially to support the farming community and have access to learn the skills from the people who are currently farming. So something to think about. Don't know if that's a solution, but potentially.
So to touch on that, I love that idea. I was thinking of like Smithsonian land. I don't think that's in our, but it's over.
Yeah.
But that idea where they built houses on there for the people to study when they're there to study, they built a bunch of little houses there. And love that, like truly, because it's giving people the opportunity to come, so they don't have to like go back and forth with you do these things, and then scientists. But that is like looking into further generations, like giving people the opportunity to access land that they couldn't afford any, because it's insane, the pricing, especially in Davidsonville, for land. And that would be a really great way to like expand on affordable homes or affordable property, but also give them that rural feel of being in a county, learning the farm, learning like the history of the area too.
I don't have anything to add. Other than preservation of the area, it's all here.
Have we ever,
You know, so I think the number one goal is to preserve what we have, we're all here for that goal. Because it is very special. But I don't have anything else to add as this is.
The preservation for you, number one. Great. Is
Have
there
we-
anyone else who
have we
hasn't
ever-
spoken yet? I'm sorry. Is everybody else? Okay, great. Please, Frank.
ever, thought about, you know, we have a lot of celebrities from Region 8. Travis Pastrana, Steve Wynn, got to start at Delta Bingo. You go to Wikipedia and Google Wason's Corner, and you'll see Steve Wynn's name pop out there. I'm not saying he should come over here and build a casino, but, you know, he was here when it was, you know, more agricultural, more farmland, when, you know, dumpies you could walk into without water dripping on your head probably. But, you know, I wonder if he ever thinks wistfully about the olden times here. And then there's Travis Pastrana, and I'm sure there's many more. There's, the guy, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the French Chateau over off of, Nutwell Sudley Road, but, can't remember what that guy's name is.
Anybody who's trying to try, I'd love to be there. What's the huge now?
Yeah, he's still got his place in Davidsonville.
Yeah, and he sold that to, yeah, his company.
I think you're still,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Governor.
That's
Yeah.
by. But he was, so he's not in the region anymore.
Yeah, oh, darn.
Anybody else?
Money and Rand,
Anything else?
like Steve Wynn.
You want Steve Wynn back?
Huh?
Steve Wynn back, is that part of the reason?
Yeah.
I wanted to support Peggy's point about, not asking too much and not calling attention ourselves in certain ways in the town, because it is true. It's like, it's almost like maybe we should be saying, leave us alone. But I've seen cases of that in other counties where, yeah, that brings, so it's just something we need.
It's like, we just have some paper, this and a couple of circles and then just leave us.
Yeah,
alone.
yeah, maybe, exactly.
I will say, I think Executive Pittman is, I mean, he's from Davidsonville, him and his family have that Doden, a wonderful vineyard, if anyone hasn't been to before. But I mean, he's big on farms and restoring that, so hopefully he'll appreciate Region 8's goals.
Bring back road.
In Arundel County, 600 acres.
Wow.
But he's not gonna be in office that much longer. We don't know where the next one's coming from.
That is why we're doing this plan now.
Yeah, it'll be done for you.
We're putting in the work.
One thing that we do have in the county now is and state is preservation programs. And so a lot of the farms are incentivized to consider selling their development rights to preservation. And so the way it exists now, there has to be a certain amount of acreage before the numbers make sense. And it's still, if you look at Anne Arundel County, the way we're talking about it, we all know how expensive it is and how much the land is worth. And so that program is challenging because, somebody looking at their future children's potential might think, why would I want to sell to preservation because my kids aren't going to be able to survive. So it's possible that preservation program could be looked at to see if we could potentially fund something to increase the value for smaller tracts of land.
Well, there are some nuances there's a couple of different programs. So the Maryland Ag Land Preservation Program through MDA, you can preserve farms less than 50 acres if they're contiguous to other conserved farms. So there is that possibility. And then the Rural Legacy Program, there's no acreage minimum, but you do have to be in a designated rural legacy area, which actually includes a lot of Region 8. But I will say, like, our farms are in preservation, and I'm glad they are, but sometimes I'm not.
Yeah.
Because, like, I think my grandmother was one of the first mouth easements in 1983 on our farm. And think about how things have changed since 1983. And those restrictions are permanent in that easement. And I think it's just something to consider down the road to have those easements obviously honor the agricultural integrity of the property, but think about ways that it can evolve into the future as, agriculture and rural economies change, down the road.
100%.
Yeah.
So I think maybe looking at we could try to understand to a maybe greater degree more about the preservation program so that we could potentially make some recommendations. Because what
There's one, the farm, okay, sorry.
So I think if you don't understand what Emily's specifically referring to is that when you have, my farm's also in preservation, and when you have that agreement, it states what you can and cannot do. And it may have been saying my farm was put in way before me. And so they are kind of antiquated insofar as what today's rural economy demands. So if you are going to figure out a model in agriculture that is sustainable and potentially profitable, which we all know is very difficult, that those limitations in the preservation contracts are so restrictive that it doesn't even necessarily allow you to do what today's agricultural community is commanding, the demand for the products or the services. So that's, I think, what you're referring to.
Right.
So in other words, some farms are not incentivized because they're fearful that they can't even do their own ag businesses any longer. And it is challenging. I've been through the ringer. I'll tell you, through
Yeah.
the ringer.
Can you still
change
farm there though?
Apparently, yes, we can.
You can't change those?
Yeah.
You can't like
No,
petition to get them changed?
Well, there has, you have to work hard, very hard.
Interject for a minute. There has been usually a shipment program from British Parks over to Arundel Avenue Springs. So I think Cox, here's after manages that. And, they're actually in the process now, kind of thinking about, yeah, how do we evolve this to make it align with current and future sustainability of agriculture? These same topics, thinking about what the size requirements, how we take flexibility in easements and ability for them to evolve or have to be discussed internally. We're actually arranging to have integrated with this planning process, have a separate workshop meeting later this month with the Ag Commission. We'll bring in Eddie Franceschi, who is the manager of that program, and Jane can sit down with the Ag Commission and talk about what are some of these needs and issues that surface. We're gonna identify things that we can't afford to flush out. We're not gonna, say, oh, this is the ideal financial now put it into easements, and how we're gonna change the state program as well. We won't get all the way there, like we can definitely surface some of these issues and get them integrated in the plan. Things to work on.
Yeah.
And so, and we'll bring back that discussion of the action committee.
And,
I was just gonna say, there's a little known program, my farm in St. Mary's County, I just have like 80 acres, something like that. I went through the DNR. So they allowed me to parcel out 2 acres if my daughter wants to build a house there. She can. I can do anything I want. I can timber it, I can farm it, I can do anything I want. There's one little caveat. Somebody wants to walk through the woods. They can. But nobody knows about it. I ain't had a visitor in 3 years, because they don't advertise it or nothing, but I never wanted to see it get developed. So I did that, but if my daughter ever wants to have her little horse farm down there, she can. But not many people know about that program.
I think is everybody complete? Does anybody have anything last minute thoughts they want to throw out there?
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, so, we actually are ahead of schedule, which is great.
I actually did, I'm sorry, especially while Jane is here. Some of the, this is like our history and culture meeting, and we have pockets in the county that have extraordinary, buildings of history that aren't, I think we only have, 2 areas that are historic districts?
Yeah, the nature of most of the resources in Southern Arundel County are individual privately owned structures that are part of the agricultural farms that are districts. So the districts we have are kind of rare because we only have a few crossroads communities. The 2 that are listed in the national register, the key there is the reason they're listed in the national register is because the community agreed to it.
Yeah.
You have to have consent for the private property owner.
Mhm.
And at every turn when we try to get services, and we haven't been able to get any kind of community consistency, no interest because of the fear of what that means.
Right.
It's not being able to get property. So I think it's an education process, that needs to go on, and then also whether it truly is a priority. I think there's so much language here saying that, it's important to preserve our heritage, to preserve our history. And I think that all sounds really good on paper until it's your house and you're not allowed here. So I think it's a reality check of how serious is the community about wanting to.
The community and the county, because my personal experience of trying to preserve a property and turn it into something that would be a viable operation and not able to get permission.
And the last more again, it's not.
Yeah. So I think that it's both. It's both. And you personally work hard for me, so I'm not saying that. But it was, so I think that there are opportunities and there are people who are willing to go out on a limb to do it in private individuals, and county doesn't have the structure set up to make it happen because it's a fear factor, a safety, who's liable, who's this, who's that. So there are potential opportunities there to maybe open up that conversation. That's a good point. Out of good history.
So, given the conversation's kind of wrapping up the vision statement, I see Justin got about 11 bullet points here. I have a scrap piece of paper full of notes, and I know Mike's been typing away the whole time too, so hopefully with all that information and the recording that's been going on, we're gonna be, now go back to the office, we're gonna be typing up a vision statement for you all. You guys can review it, we can have a discussion of that at a later meeting, and hopefully that can be incorporated into the file.
There's been a lot of discussion, I guess, very well good ideas and a lot of really good thought. This is actually
So given that, we're kind of wrapping up tonight's meeting, this is where the chair, we can open up public comment if you like.
Is everybody okay with that? Okay. We have any comments from the public?
I would love to see, Region 8 when a big farm or or the, purchase. Because we are like, space of the cannon and Michael, for the more question trails. The street question trails that in on the county offers for all of the York County, two of which don't have trailer parties. Right. So you can't get to work there, so that leaves three. And three of which are straight line paved areas that we share with rollerbladers and, you know, push trails and whatnot, bike clip. And so I would love to see South County embrace their horse farm and their agricultural needs and, have some viable funding.
So the only equestrian trails are private in South Carolina. Ah,
Yeah. So we have a lot in Harwood, maybe, you know,
yeah.
they're all on private land and we all kind of have this agreement where, yeah, you can ride on the trail. But you know, eventually there's gonna be somebody, I mean, the farm that I own, my door neighbor has even though he paints the back 10 acres of his farm, the other 200, he doesn't allow trail. But those people can run trail ride on the farm either. I think that's sure, Doctor, your comment, well, did you guys say your name? Yeah, faintly.
And I think that actually does, kind of hold well with a lot of what I've heard, is that people want access to, I'm gonna use the word nature. And maybe the heritage, so if you thought about that combined with maybe community garden space, where people are actually learning. And then perhaps they're able to grow their own food while the horses are out, you know, and they're riding your horses through the trail, so. Perhaps a multi-purpose, public land acquisition in South County.
Community gardens. And then we try.
Well, I think there's a part which is in PG County, the mountain trail along with the foot.
Yeah.
And they, so we really.
It's actually the good part.
Awesome.
So I'm here, not only with the property, but I'm here to actually speak to that about reviews. For the reason they are in the area, they still property, and watching what has happened to the farm, watching the diced up into small pieces, that notion of having publicly available access for public trails. I was very fortunate to for a while, be able to have my horse with a place that had access to all of the main trails. Well, I moved back home to my own farm and I have my acreage that is completely landlocked by development, by mega mansions on all sides. I can no longer ride out. And I think it's an economic question too, for the equestrian operation. If they can board their horses, if they can board horses and make money on their small little farmette, there's nowhere for them to go in Anne Arundel County. They have to go to the shores and from George County to other counties, and it is a real lost opportunity, not only for the preservation component of acquiring, using public resources to acquire land for the preservation purposes, but then also in South County, the thing that I'm concerned about is that it is rural, we all respect that, but the idea of developing parks with lit ball fields, with pickleball courts, I don't think that's the nature of South County. And I guess my concern is the suburbanization of a rural area. If you're going to protect a big plot of land, please don't put ballparks on it. Let people enjoy nature like enjoy. Let animals be there. That's the big thing that I've been struggling trying to get access to, David Ridge Park horses. And we basically been told horses they can't go on the natural trail. And here you have this huge piece of property in the county that should be accessible for natural use like that, but nature's being pushed out. So I'm hoping that there could be opportunities for the county to invest in land, perform preservation in the same step, and then also encourage the equestrian operations that are working here and operating here.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you all, the members of the public who, so to wrap up the final homeless. Wrap up, it's kind of our bulletin board, the material put at the end of every slide, kind of giving what's out there, if anything for public, next, meeting, etc. So if anybody has reached out to you, have a lot of time to check, I want to zone check. The applications are currently live on our region website, which is the website at the bottom, aacounty.org/region8. At the top of the page, there's a quick, couple info questions, they can answer and apply for a, request to change their zoning.
Does that open up every year, the zoning changing?
No, that's part of the coverage of the zoning process, which is part of the region plan. And give or take, it's not every 10 years.
Okay.
Oh, but there are other ways to get your property rezoned that are much more difficult. This is the time for anybody who wants to really encourage them to do it.
Are those applications publicly available to view?
They're not yet, but they will be. So how that process, I'll give you a quick overview back to the point. What's gonna happen is people are applying now, for region A, and up to 5 to 6 well, but for region A specifically, people can apply, they're applying through December 16th. So once the deadline closes, staff will begin reviewing them, and writing a staff recommendation. Before the public has a chance to review them, you all have a chance to review. So there'll be a staff recommendation and then an SAC recommendation. It could be the same, it could be different. And then the public's gonna have an opportunity to review that as well. And then eventually they'll go to the planning advisory board. The planning advisory board will see staff's recommendation and then your all's recommendation. They'll make their own recommendation. It could be the same, it could be different, it could be one of the two, right? So, and then all that will be piled up together and eventually sent to county council, where county council has the authority to make final decision. But the public will have an opportunity to review everything you review, but we want you, because you guys are appointed here to this position, you guys should have the first opportunity to do so for the public, is our promise. So, but again, it's emphasized, the public will have an opportunity to review and provide comment on these other applications.
Do you have a sense of how many have come in yet or will come in?
I have not looked, I should have been up there.
Oh.
But, I know there have been probably at least a half. Yeah, I'll get an updated number for next time, but it's still gonna be official. The next meeting is gonna be December 5th, 5 same time, 5 to 8:30. We're gonna do the jug day wetlands distinction. I'll send an email with the agenda, address, all that stuff, just make sure we all have the same information. Make sure it's there. And for that, food reminder, I know Mike was nice enough to get pizza for tonight.
And it wasn't Lido.
So I don't know if there wanted to be a conversation, you guys want to continue sharing or go to bring your own food, however you want that to work out, we can have a few minutes to discuss together.
Anybody have any recommendations on that?
Oh, yeah, I'll bring pizza again, I don't care.
I'll bring money to help you out.
Nah,
Yeah, volunteered. Is there a hat that's being had or something for the pizza?
hold up.
But the only thing is,
No.
the
Oh,
only
sorry.
food is if anybody has dietary restrictions,
Oh.
that would be good to share, just so that we can accommodate everyone. I'm not gonna mention like you're vegan, so if there's any other like food for your concerns or allergies, we can make sure everyone can have something. So yeah, I can get the food next time, whether it's salad and some meat or something.
Are you volunteering?
I'm volunteering, yeah. And I also, if you want, I feel like a sign up bonus, you could all sign up for the meeting, or you could just volunteer at the next meeting, whatever.
We want to organize it, I think that would be super.
Okay, I got you. I'll do that. And then I'll send it when it's.
I have one comment, Jesse, I think somebody had asked, and he mentioned that you could possibly bring a map, maybe we could just put it on the presentation that shows publicly owned land as well in this region.
Yes. From the slide, the next meeting is gonna focus on environment parks, so we'll bring in residents from parks, the so they can come. Something brought up about, Rockville. Park of the years. Well, River Greenway. The David Brazil, South County, County. paragraph of the queue, what their plans are with the area, and take your feedback anyway. And, we'll put them on.
Nice, man. Like that, I think what you did with that.
One question I have to do real quick.
I gotta read
Is,
it.
if anybody did not get an email from me. About a survey, questionnaire, anything.
Got multiple
everybody can-
emails.
Yeah,
Does anybody want to make a motion to close our meeting tonight?
Make a second meeting.
Second, motion, second for Frank, and all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all very much.